I'm Nedra Knurr, President of Futura RGV. Welcome to Kirk Clark, President and CEO of Clark Chevrolet, and promoter, supporter, and patron of many of the arts and cultural and educational events in our community. Plus, Kirk is a renowned artist himself, and probably very important to me, he's one of my very special friends. So I want to welcome Kirk Clark, a man extraordinaire.
Thank you, Ned.
I do want to bring attention to the supporters of Futura RGV who help us bring these programs and these very interesting people to our Futura page. And you will notice that among them is Kirk Clark's Clark Chevrolet. So these discussions and other Valley leaders are on the Futura RGV Facebook page and YouTube and social media for further viewing. Now, our Futura RGV moderator, Elba Cerda, is director of the McAllen Heritage Center and also one of the founding members of the Heritage Center. And so Elba and Kirk will discuss how the pandemic has affected our cultural life and how important the arts and culture can be as we adjust our lives to cope with the stress of COVID. So now, Elba, will you and Kirk help us understand the importance of recognizing and enjoying the beauty of our arts and culture during the pandemic? Elba?
Thank you, Nedra. I'm really pleased to be here today. One, because we're going to be talking about something I love, and two, because I love to be positive. And really, now's the time to share positive information with people that are going to be viewing this. And I appreciate that Futuro is putting out this type of program. I know a lot of it has been serious and more, I guess, negative in nature than what we're going to be doing here today. I'm really pleased to be talking to my friend also, Kirk Clark. We're both McAllen natives. And Kirk, my dad was always a faithful buyer of cars from your daddy.
That's great.
Yeah. And, you know, Kirk, on behalf of the McAllen Heritage Center, want to thank you. I think we've thanked you before, but in a more public way, for your support of the History Center that we founded in 2006. You've been a donor, a supporter, and, you know, by way of that, I ended up with one of your angel pieces in my house through an early on. We did a raffle that benefited the museum, and you were one of our sponsors. Yeah. And I do want you to talk a little bit about that series. It's a beautiful, mine is the reds, beautiful reds. I have it framed. It's in my room because I find it very peaceful, and I don't know, there's a message in that. So we at the McAllen Heritage Center have been working hard to make the museum much better during this time that we've had to be closed to the public. And I'm sure IMAS and yourself are taking time to reflect, learn, and grow during this time. And so I'm really pleased with the things we're accomplishing. We'll be reopening the museum on November 4th, right after Election Day. And we will need some positive things, hopefully one way or the other, once that happens. So what I wanted to do today is hear from you, Kirk. You're a valuable member of our community, an artist, and someone we all appreciate and want to learn from. So I'd like for you to discuss, first start off with the angels, you know, and maybe then take us through whatever you want to talk about today concerning your art and the pandemic.
Welcome. Well, the series that you're referring to is titled The Angel's Path. And I'm not exactly sure. It's been quite a period of time ago that I started that series. I do remember how it started. I was actually painting tiles in a place that's now closed down in a series called The Universe Below, which combined a view of outer space with a view of undersea. And I noticed the coincidence of the same molecular structures in both in outer space and undersea. And I was doing one of these Universe Below tiles, and I don't know if it was a voice or what, but I heard the message, put that tile aside, give me a fresh tile. So I used the butt end of a paintbrush to create dots, and the dots represented molecules of sound. And so instead of putting the first dot right in the middle of that equidistant tile, it was slightly higher. And I said, well, that's weird. So I came up to the right and I put another dot there, and I said, well, let's kind of make a V out of this. And all of a sudden, when you use the glaze paint, when you put it down, the first drop or first time you touch the tile surface, that's the largest dot. The next one is slightly smaller, smaller, smaller. And so I did this curvilinear shape off of that original dot, and it looked like actually a seagull flying right at you. And I said, that's really weird. But I noticed that the distance between my first dot and one of the end small dots was slightly closer than the other wing. And so I followed that line on down and did kind of a switchback. And I said, wow, this has got an interesting thing, but I think it needs kind of a head on it. And so I put a couple of dots for a head. And I said, well, if it needs a head, it needs an aura. So I did an aura, and I did not know what the heck it was. And for about 6 months, I kept doing it, but I didn't know why or what I was doing. And I was out in New Mexico with my artist buddy, Tom Wheeler, and we were enjoying some of his special tequila, talking about the Atomic Jesus, which I'd just taken him one of my tile paintings. And I think after more than a little tequila, he looked at me, he said, Kirk, I know exactly what that image is. I said, well, what is it, Tom? I'm curious. He said, that's the Atomic Jesus. I said, yes, that's exactly right. It is the Atomic Jesus. And so that's developed, this was 20 years ago. This has developed into a lifelong journey trying to understand the relationship between sound and creation. And it's been very rewarding, and sheltering at home in my 8th month has given me a lot of time to work in my art studio, and I'm progressing and doing some really kind of fun stuff that I have time and the freedom to do right now.
How many of those pieces did you complete for the Atomic Jesus series?
I'm not sure because I did them both in painting and on tile. But I'm going to have to say probably 150 over about a 5 to 7 year period.
Wow, that is amazing. Well, let's bring you a little closer now and talk a little more about maybe IMAS, anything happening over there with your artwork you want to talk to us about?
Yes, I've got a show that's been up for a while called Cosmic Connections. It's going to be coming down on the 14th of November. So we're running out of time for people to see it, but it's my first legacy show, and it spans 63 years of my artwork, and also some of the pieces out of my one that my father did, a couple of pieces out of the collection that they donated to IMAS, just to show the generational connection there. My parents were two of the original founders of the museum, and we've always had a very, very wonderful connection with IMAS, and just know how important it is to serve the community with that museum, but in particular the children, school children, and having the ability both on the science and art side to share those experiences. There are only about 5 certified art and science museums in the United States, IMAS being one of them. It presents tremendous opportunities, but also tremendous challenges, because sometimes people forget that art is science and science is art.
Right. Well, that sounds really interesting. And now the piece I saw is on your narrative. They're so colorful, and they just kind of explode. And I think that's what you refer to as the title of the show.
Yes, and it's really, for me, it's the joy of the visual discovery of creation. I guess I've got a pretty good imagination, and it's not that I think that God is talking directly to me. I just think he has built sound into our environment, natural sound into our environment that in many cases is very, very beneficial to us. That's why I think getting out of doors and breathing fresh air, listening to the birds, looking at the trees and the plants can be good for all of us, particularly during times like this. And I think that, I'm trying to make my art be very supportive of people that are struggling financially and medically and psychologically. I know being pretty much quarantined, I find it pretty frustrating because I'm a kind of a can-do kind of guy and like to be involved in my business and businesses, and I'm having to do it vicariously, and I'm pestering the heck out of my my associates trying to keep up with stuff. But it's also given me a chance to slow down a little bit and really take a look at the configurations of my work. For example, the work in the background that you noted has basically 3 general orbs in it, and those orbs represent the Holy Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, one in all and all in one. And that's kind of the concept. I've moved from that to include that componentry, but also to do suggestive figurative work as well, as if you think about the passage from life to death to afterlife. One of the things that I discovered in my journey was that in the Jewish faith, the soul stays in the body for 2 days, maybe 3, and then it departs, which I found very interesting, particularly when you think about the 3 days following the entombment of Christ.
Exactly.
And the resurrection. So there are connections there that are kind of inexplicable, but that are historical, that had a powerful effect on my artwork. And actually, I'm trying to be very open to what to the possibilities of these directions that I've taken over the last 20 years. But now it's almost like, kayaking down a gentle stream. There's something around every bend that you couldn't have anticipated that's fun and challenging. And so it keeps me involved. And as much as I can share with the public, I want to do it. And I'm really excited. I just got an invitation from Richard Smith at STC, art professor there, to have a show with him and I believe the head of the art department in the library in January at STC here in McAllen. And
I'm glad you're mentioning that, because I don't think a lot of people are aware of the beautiful galleries offered at STC and the work that they complete there. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, very important. And this show, I understand, will be in the library and it'll be up for some time. But it's a study of math and music, and which is coincidental because years ago when I had the show at UTRGV, it was called the visualization of sound. And so it's funny how life kind of recircles and brings you back and lets you review where you've been, where you are now, and where you're going, which I think is the natural transition between life, death, and afterlife. And I'm 74. I've been very lucky.
Spring chicken.
Yeah, I feel very lucky to be in as good shape as. Actually, I've lost about 50 pounds since I've been home sheltering.
That's the opposite. Most people are gaining weight.
Well,
so you're doing well.
It took me a little bit of time to figure it out, and some good coaching and counseling from a few doctors. But generally, I think I've had the opportunity to work out every day, to watch the proportion size that I take. I'm type 2 diabetic, so I've got to stay away from sugar.
Big problem in this area, especially.
Well, and that's one of the things that I would reflect on too. When we talk about what's going on in the valley with COVID, and I think it's been tragic.
Certainly.
I'm not sure I'm ever going to eat another egg roll again because of the China.
Well,
virus.
everything has sugar in it. But let me get back a little bit
Sure.
to one of the things. I mean, I think we could probably talk for a long time, but I love your background in that you got started at a very early age and then, of course, became a business. It's kind of a parallel. Myself, I loved to draw when I was a child, loved art. And then I thought I was going to become an illustrator. And when I was going to college, I got a job at a finance company thanks to a friend named Louise D. Cook. I don't know if you remember Chief D. Cook.
Yes.
They got me to work there, and I took a turn, and that's how I ended up becoming a banker, now a recovering banker. But it's funny how, look at what you did. Can you talk a bit about that, how you got started, and your parents' big support of your early interest in art?
Oh, yeah.
An artist?
Well, the interesting thing is my first job at the dealership was when I was 10 years old. And I made my first big mistake and got retired to clean used cars on the used car lot during the middle of summer. So I learned not to make that mistake again. But no, my father was a very fine artist and actually won a citywide competition when he was 12 years old in Kansas City, Missouri. He'd entered one of his paintings, which is actually, I think, in the IMAS show right now, and in a citywide competition. And he won first prize, not knowing that he'd entered the adult version or the adult side rather than the children's side. And so he was a very, very accomplished painter, much more pictorial. And it's interesting because he got into, he was quite a student of the arts and realized that, really collecting expensive paintings was going to be very difficult for him financially. But he realized that prints of various types, original artworks on paper, were a solution to that. He could get representations of the very best artists from around the world for a lot less per component than he could buying paintings. Occasionally he'd buy a painting, but anyway, he was fascinating. He and my mother donated over 34,000 works of art to 34 universities and museums around the country, of artwork that he collected from the artwork done as early as 1907 to 1985 when the tax law changed. And he was the only certified investor, had the only certified investor status in the southern region of the Internal Revenue Service in the United States. And so he was able to give this work away and take some tax advantage for the gifts. But he was very unique in that regard. And so growing up, we had artists visiting from all over the world in my house. And some of their works were up on our walls. And it was so nice to meet these artists, be encouraged by them. And so it was something special. And then when I think I was around 12 years of age, I entered the Mission Citrus Fiesta art show. Again, I didn't realize I was entering the adult division, and I won first prize with my painting, a painting titled Armageddon. And it was me actually leaning back away from the explosion of a nuclear blast, and the left side of my body was melting. And I did it in a Cubist style. And at that age, when my parents saw what I did, they gave me a canvas, some paints and paintbrushes, said, "Go at it, son." When they saw that, they were the ones that encouraged me to enter it into the Mission Citrus Fiesta art show. And incidentally, when I picked up my my blue ribbon, first prize in the adult division with a bunch of sulking adults around. Uh, I was walking back to my mom and dad who were standing in the background, and this little old lady jumped in front of me and kind of put her hand on my sternum and said, "Wait a minute, young man, I want to buy that painting." And I said, "Well, thank you so much. I'm glad you do, but it's my very first painting and I don't want to sell it." She said, "No, you don't understand. I want to buy that painting." And I said, "Well, thank you, but no thank you." And so she starts shuffling around in her purse and she brings out 4 crisp $100 bills.
A lot of
And
money.
I had a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
I grabbed that money so fast and I shoved that painting under her arm. And that was the first indication that I was going to be a car dealer someday.
I love that story, Kirk. And of course, I'm a big fan of the Citrus Fiesta. So look at you getting your beginnings at that event. You know, we don't
Yeah.
have much time left. Nedra, we're going to have to complain and say we really need a lot more time to talk about this very important subject. But do you want to maybe talk a bit about how IMAS has, dealt through the pandemic in a very short period of time and just give us a little bit of insight?
Sure. Well, they've taken every possible precaution. They have reduced hours, but they are doing a lot of online work, and they're staying very active. And they're really looking forward to the time when they can have the kids back in the numbers that they need to be back in to enjoy. I think the role of a museum is, if done properly, which I think IMAS does, is to share the joy both on the art side and the science side, and also to make the connection between the two. And for me personally, because that's the way my art has progressed over the years, I'm delighted to see an institution that's dedicated to that. And so it's very fulfilling from that standpoint. But I
Are
do
we
wish
ready to go ahead?
I do wish everyone a quick recovery that has COVID. Be very careful, social distance, wear masks. You're in my prayers, and we need to be praying for each other. We are a family in the Valley, and we need to take care of each other as a family in the Valley.
Thank you, Kirk. And I also want to mention that I appreciate the spiritual sustenance that you talked about in your current work, because that's something we all need right now, especially, and not to lose sight of the greater powers that we need in our lives. So I think we have a lot more we could cover, but like I said, I think I heard a little bell there. Nedra, are we out of time or?
Probably so, although I agree, we may have to come back. And Kirk, I would like to tell both of you that we are interviewing IMAS's Ann Forrester and Anastasia Perez to tell us more about how IMAS is helping us during this pandemic. And that's going to be on right the week of Christmas. We figured that would be a wonderful way of helping our Valley family celebrate Christmas.
That's wonderful. I find that Ann Fortescue is just a wonderful executive director of the museum. She's hardworking, very bright, very dedicated, team player. She's put together a great team, and every encounter that I've had with her and the museum, Myra and everyone over there, has just been a delight. They're so wonderful to work with, and they're so community oriented.
I don't know her well. I'm hoping that when you and I get together at IMAS on November the 10th, perhaps you can introduce me to her and I'll get better acquainted.
Yeah, and I look forward to meeting her as well, Kirk. I don't know that I have met her, but I think as museums, we need to work closer together. I know I've met with Francisco from MOST, and he is just amazing and dynamic. And I think we all need to be closer to each other, regardless of what we cover. We do history, you do art and science. We're all museums. We're all critical and important, especially right now. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. If you'd like to join Nedra and another friend of mine on Tuesday, the 10th of November at 10 a.m. I'm going to, pardon?
At 10 o'clock.
At 10 o'clock, yes. On the 10th at the museum, I'm going to be doing a walkthrough, and I can explain the artwork.
Love to. Love
Yeah,
to.
good.
Well, thank you so much, Kirk. I love talking to you, and it's good to see you.
Oh,
Providence and I talked about you last night, so she thinks the world of you as well. So,
well, thank you so much. And thank
Well,
you for
we
the wonderful
will
job.
wrap this up. We will wrap this up now. We could go on for a long, long time, but we will wrap it up. I do want to remind everybody that we are interviewing Valley leaders about how we're responding to the pandemic. And new ones will be on every Thursday on the Futura RTV Facebook page and YouTube. And so I will say once again, thank you to two of my very, very favorite people, Kirk and Elba.
love
And
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoyed
Thank
it.
you.
so much. So goodbye for now.
Bye-bye, Kirk. Bye,
Thank
Nedra.
you. God bless you.
God bless.